The fastest way to raise your value in someone's eyes is by setting the boundary that scares you most. It's not your beauty, not your charm. It's the courage to say, "That doesn't work for me," because boundaries don't push people away. They filter out the ones who never respected you to begin with. Welcome back to Unshakable You, where we don't chase love, we attract it through clarity, self-worth, and the unapologetic truth about who we are. If you're tired of feeling like you're too much, or never enough, like your kindness gets mistaken for weakness, or your silence gets rewarded with disrespect, then this video is for you. Today, we're unpacking 7 high-value boundaries that don't just protect your peace, they elevate your attraction, command respect, and make you emotionally magnetic. And no, we're not talking about surface-level dating rules. We're diving deep into the energetic boundaries that silently teach people how to treat you, without ever raising your voice. Let me paint a familiar picture. You start talking to someone new. The chemistry is undeniable. At first, they text consistently, make plans, maybe even talk about the future. But slowly, the texts get shorter. The plans get vaguer. And suddenly, you're in a situationship with no clarity, no commitment, and no consistency. You tell yourself, maybe they're just busy. If I give them more time, they'll come around. If I show them how loyal I am, they'll see my value. So you stay. You wait. You tolerate. Even when your gut screams, "This isn't what you want." Sound familiar? You're not weak. You're not naive. You just haven't been taught the power of a boundary before the breakdown. Because most of us were raised to associate boundaries with rejection, confrontation, or selfishness. But in reality, boundaries are the bridge between self-love and self-respect. They are not a punishment to others, they're a protection of your inner world. Let's get brutally honest. The reason most people struggle to set boundaries isn't because they don't know what they should say. It's because they fear what happens after they say it. We fear rejection. We fear abandonment. We fear being seen as difficult or too much. But what you don't realize is this: every time you silence your truth to keep someone, you abandon a part of yourself. That's not connection, that's self-betrayal. Real talk. Poor boundaries are often rooted in old emotional wounds. Here's how. If you grew up with emotionally unavailable caregivers, you likely learned that love had to be earned, not received freely. So now, you overgive to prove you're worthy. If you were constantly dismissed or gaslit, you doubt your needs. You tell yourself things like, "Maybe I am asking for too much." If your past relationships rewarded compliance over authenticity, you learned to stay quiet instead of rocking the boat, because survival meant staying small. But here's the dangerous pattern that emerges. You keep attracting people who reinforce your wounds. You get close to someone, and suddenly your fear of abandonment wakes up. So, you overfunction. You call more, check in more, do more, hoping to keep them close. What happens next? They lose interest. You feel rejected. And the cycle repeats. Why? Because you've never set a boundary and stood still long enough to see who can meet you where you are, without chasing, without shrinking. So now you're ready to raise your standards, but here's the catch. High-value boundaries aren't just about saying no, they're about embodying self-respect consistently. Let's break this down into 2 practical strategies. Strategy 1. Set boundaries early, not after the pattern is set. Most people wait until they're overwhelmed, burned out, or anxious to set boundaries. But by then, the damage is done. What to do instead? Communicate your preferences early. For example, "I'm someone who values consistency." If you're not that kind of communicator, that's totally fine. "I just like to know where I stand." You're not being controlling. You're being clear. And clarity is sexy. Strategy 2. Don't explain yourself excessively. Over-explaining is often a trauma response. High-value individuals don't feel the need to justify every choice. They say things like, "I'm not available for that. That doesn't align with what I'm looking for. Thanks for the invite, but I'll pass." You don't owe a TED Talk every time you honor your needs. Now that we have become exposed to 2 practical strategies to approach the limits of our boundaries, let's dive deep into the 7 high-value boundaries that instantly raise your attraction. Boundary number 1. Honor your boundaries. Even when it's uncomfortable, this is where most people fail. They'll say, if he cancels on me again, I'm done. Then he cancels again, and guess what? They make an excuse. They stay. They understand. But every time you break your own boundary, you teach people how to treat you, and worse, you teach yourself that your standards are negotiable. That's the real betrayal. So how do you avoid that? Pre-decide your limits. Write them down. Set emotional consequences. If this happens, I will do that. Practice in low-stakes situations. Say no to that extra task at work. Decline the invite you don't want. Build the muscle. Boundaries aren't about punishment, they're about protection. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Boundary number 2. Emotional regulation is your responsibility, not theirs. This is where most people confuse connection with codependence. When you're upset, anxious, or triggered, it's natural to want someone to make it better. But emotional maturity, which is incredibly attractive, is when you say, this is how I feel, and I'm working through it. Not, this is how I feel, and it's your job to fix it. Letting someone support you is different from making them responsible for your regulation. Here's the difference. Support says, I appreciate you being here while I process this. Dependency says, I need you to behave differently so I can feel okay. People are drawn to those who can own their emotions, not those who outsource them. Revolving light attraction killer. Expecting a partner to regulate your emotions when you won't learn how to regulate your own. Bullseye practice. When you're triggered, say, I'm noticing I feel disrespected. I'm going to take a moment to regulate and reflect. Then come back to the conversation from a grounded place, not a reactive one. This boundary keeps your energy attractive, not reactive. Boundary number 3. No is a complete sentence. Without the guilt. A high-value boundary is learning how to say no with calm confidence. Not with justification. Not with over-explanation. Not with a side of guilt. Just no, because your peace matters more than their temporary approval. A person who respects you will respect your boundary. A person who doesn't was benefiting from you not having one. Let's be clear, no isn't rejection. It's redirection. Back to your own values, time, and energy. Bullseye practice saying no. Thanks for thinking of me, but I'll pass. That doesn't align with where I'm at right now. I'm not available for that. Each time you honor your no, you reinforce your self-trust, and that's what radiates confidence and attraction. Boundary number 4. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. This one is going to sting, in the best way. You don't owe access to your thoughts, feelings, or life choices to people who have already decided not to understand you. When you explain yourself over and over to someone who minimizes, gaslights, or deflects, you don't get clarity. You get exhaustion. Trying to explain your worth to someone who isn't listening is the fastest way to forget your value. Bullseye embody this shift. My energy is no longer available for debates about my boundaries. Either you get it, or you get less access to me. People who value you won't need endless explanations. People who don't will always demand more justification, and give you less respect. Boundaries protect your dignity, not just your time. Boundary number 5. Prioritize emotional alignment over physical chemistry. Here's the plot twist most people don't realize. You can feel chemistry with someone who's not emotionally safe for you. In fact, unresolved trauma can amplify attraction to emotionally unavailable partners, because unpredictability mirrors your past. But chemistry isn't compatible. And lust isn't love. A high-value person sets a boundary by choosing consistency over chaos, emotional safety over surface-level thrill, long-term fulfillment over short-term intensity. Bullseye. Ask yourself before getting attached. Do I feel calm with them, or am I just chasing the highs between the lows? True attraction is peaceful. It's steady. It's not addictive, it's expansive. If your nervous system feels like it's in fight or flight every time they pull back, that's not chemistry. That's conditioning. Choose emotional alignment, and your love life will transform. Boundary number 6. Time is earned, not owed. Don't confuse attention with access. They're not the same thing. Time is one of the most valuable currencies you have. But the truth is, many people treat it like loose change, handing it out to anyone who shows interest, replies fast, or flirts well. Here's the hard truth. Someone hasn't shown consistency, alignment, or emotional maturity. They haven't earned access to your time. And no, this isn't about playing hard to get. It's about being hard to forget, because you were intentional, not available on demand. Signs: your time boundary is weak. You instantly drop everything when they finally reply. You over-explain why you're busy. Just to not seem rude, you constantly reschedule your own needs to accommodate theirs. But emotionally attractive people? They let time reflect their values. I'm excited to talk. Let's find a time that works. I value mutual effort. Your calendar is a mirror of your self-worth. And someone who respects you won't get upset that you're not always available. They'll be drawn to you because you have a full life. Boundary number 7. Clarity over confusion in communication. Mixed signals are already a message. Stop decoding what was never encrypted. Let's talk about one of the most underrated high-value boundaries: refusing to entertain confusion. Here's what usually happens. They flirt one day, disappear the next. They say, "I'm not ready for anything serious," but act jealous when you set boundaries. They breadcrumb you just enough to keep you curious, but not enough to give you clarity. Sound familiar? That's not romance. That's emotional manipulation. And people who are magnetic don't beg for explanations, they define their standards. If it's unclear, it's a no. If I have to wonder, I already have my answer. Set the boundary. I don't do uncertainty games. If you're unsure about me, I'll save you the guesswork. I'm not the one. That one sentence alone will protect your peace, elevate your energy, and filter out anyone who thinks your self-respect is optional. Let's shift from theory to real defense. High-value boundaries don't just sound empowering. They shield you from patterns that have drained your energy for years. Here's how to avoid the most common traps that sabotage boundaries and attraction. Challenge number 1. Mistaking harshness for strength. There's a fine line between confidence and coldness. Many people, especially after being hurt, swing to the extreme. I don't need anyone. I'll never let someone in again. But real strength isn't built on walls, it's built on discernment. You don't need to be harsh to be powerful. You don't need to become emotionless to be respected. High-value boundaries sound like, I value emotional consistency. I won't participate in half investments. If the energy feels off, I'm allowed to ask questions. You avoid pushing love away by learning the art of neutral firmness. Assertive, not aggressive. Clear, not cruel. Challenge number 2. Ghosting instead of communicating. The most magnetic people aren't avoidant, they're emotionally intelligent. Yes, walk away when your boundary is violated. But also be someone who can express truth without drama. You don't disappear to prove your worth. You state it, then walk in alignment with it. Avoid the temptation to match immature behavior just to protect your ego. That's how you lose your own standard. Remember, clear communication is hot. It shows confidence. And it saves you from building resentment in silence. Challenge number 3. Giving second chances to first-time. Red flags. We're conditioned to doubt our intuition. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe they didn't mean it that way. Maybe if I'm more patient. But here's a rule that will save you years of heartache. Red flags don't turn green. If someone's baseline behavior is chaotic, hot and cold, emotionally unavailable, or disrespectful, you don't need more data. You need more standards. You avoid this challenge by making pre-decisions before you enter connections. Know what behaviors are deal breakers. Know what energy you won't tolerate. And don't make exceptions for potential. Boundaries protect you from wasting your glow. Challenge number 4. Confusing compatibility with chemistry. You can feel intense attraction towards someone who is bad for your nervous system. That's not chemistry. That's trauma recognition. If someone's inconsistency feels exciting, stop and ask, Am I excited, or is my nervous system dysregulated? You avoid falling into old patterns by checking in with your body, not just your heart. True attraction feels calm, safe, seen. The spark is still there, but it's built on clarity, not confusion. Challenge number 5. Abandoning yourself to keep the peace. Every time you ignore your own boundary to keep the vibe good, you silently teach the other person that your comfort is negotiable. And here's the truth. The peace you're keeping isn't real if it costs your inner peace. Avoid self-abandonment by checking in regularly. Am I honoring my truth? Am I expressing my needs? Or suppressing them? Am I showing up for me, even if they don't? Self-respect is the fuel of attraction. When you respect yourself enough to choose discomfort over dysfunction, you show others exactly how to treat you. Quick reframe to anchor in. You're not difficult, you're discerning. You're not dramatic. You're direct. You're not cold. You're clear. You're not too much. You're finally enough for yourself. Now that you understand the 7 high-value boundaries, let's expose some dangerous myths that cause people to sabotage themselves, often without even realizing it. Fire myth number 1. Setting boundaries makes you high maintenance. No, setting boundaries makes you self-respecting. Being clear on what you want doesn't make you needy. It makes you secure. The people who label you too much are often the ones who benefit when you have too little self-worth. Truth. The right people won't be intimidated by your standards. They'll be inspired by them. Fire myth number 2. If they pull away, you should try harder. This is one of the most toxic patterns. When someone distances themselves, your instinct might be to fix, chase, or prove you're good enough. But this only teaches them that you'll tolerate breadcrumbs. Truth. When someone pulls away, the high-value response is not to chase, it's to match energy with grace. Pull your energy back and observe. Let your silence speak louder than your words. Fire myth number 3. If you have to set boundaries, it means the relationship is broken. Actually, boundaries build strong relationships. They foster trust, clarity, and emotional safety. Avoiding boundaries doesn't protect the relationship. It poisons it over time with resentment, confusion, and burnout. Truth. Healthy love has room for honesty. If you can't be real, it's not real love. Fire myth number 4. Good people won't test your boundaries. Even well-meaning people may cross your lines, not because they're malicious, but because they're human. The issue isn't whether someone tests your boundary. The real test is, how do they respond when you reinforce it? Do they respect it, or do they try to manipulate you out of it? A high-value person will appreciate the clarity you bring. A low-value person will push back, guilt trip, or ghost. That's not your loss. That's your filter doing its job. Fire myth number 5. Boundaries push people away. No. Boundaries reveal who belongs in your life and who only benefits from your lack of them. Yes, boundaries will push some people away, but only the ones who were never aligned with your worth in the first place. Let them go. Because your life isn't a charity for emotionally unavailable people. It's a sacred space for love that's mutual, consistent, and mature. Every myth you've internalized that made you feel guilty for protecting your peace is a lie designed to keep you small. But now, you're not just aware, you're awake. When you start living by high-value boundaries, you no longer hope to be seen, you expect to be. You stop operating from a space of insecurity or emotional deficit, and you start embodying a grounded, magnetic energy. You're not playing hard to get. You're just not willing to play small anymore. You become the kind of person who doesn't chase after clarity you created for yourself. Doesn't fear rejection, because you've already chosen yourself. Doesn't overextend, because you now know that love without boundaries is not love. It's self-abandonment. With high-value boundaries, your energy shifts. People treat you differently. Not because they change, but because you did. You're no longer begging to be understood. You're building a life where only those who do understand you get access. The most magnetic version of you is the one who knows their worth and refuses to explain it. The version who says, I don't raise my voice. I raise my standards. You become the energy they never forget. If this hit your soul, pause and let that feeling sink in. Let it wake something up inside of you. Speech balloon comment below. My boundaries are my power. If you're ready to step into this energy for real. Bell subscribe to Unshakable You, where your healing becomes your magnetism, and your story becomes your strength. Thumbs up like this video if you're tired of being drained by dynamics that don't serve you. TV and don't miss next week's episode. 5 power moves that shift attraction instantly. Your boundaries are the gatekeepers of your energy. Start guarding it like it's sacred, because it is. Let's rise.